as it is also the 77th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was put forth by the United Nations in its early days following the Second World War. The Declaration affirms fundamental human rights and dignity and worth of the human person, and is pertinent to our gathering today as it further reclaims in Article 5 that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. The Clergy Jail Visiting Project's aims are most certainly in line with those of the Declaration, whose common standards of achievement for all peoples and all nations recognize the inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family as the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. I am an Episcopal priest, and my own tradition calls for similar covenantal promises at baptism, that we strive for justice and peace among all peoples and respect the dignity of every human being. Today I welcome you not only as the dean of this cathedral and a house of worship in near proximity to our county downtown holding center, I greet you as a participant in this project. I had the privilege of visiting both the correctional facility in Alden and the downtown holding. The visits I made and the conversations I had with incarcerated persons are part of the collective findings contained in the report. They also match those experiences that I have had in other regions of the country. Need for better food, health services, meaningful activity, religious services and spiritual care, and greater awareness and means for dismantling racism and other forms of discrimination. In short, our issues are not necessarily unique to Erie County, but reflect an ongoing need in our nation for penal reform, not only for the sake of those who are incarcerated, but for those who serve in our correctional facilities. My personal hopes for this project are that it shed light on areas that need attention, as well as it has focused on areas where we have made improvement, and that we concentrate not on the negative in order to criticize, but to look at how we as people of this county, whose prisons are run in our name and with our tax dollars, can better work together for the good of all in our community and the greater Western New York region. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Steve Hart, the Western New York organizer for the Jails Justice Network, and the person who's now the interim coordinator for the Clergy Jail Visiting Project. And I'm so pleased that you all came and are ready to hear about what's happening in the middle of this terrible weather we're having. If you've ever landed in a jail, you know that jails and prisons have complete control over the people in their charge, life and death powers. And in addition, a characteristic of prisons and jails is that they're largely invisible to anybody outside because of their security arrangements. And the combination of the secrecy and of the ultimate power means that they're very dangerous institutions which, if they aren't watched carefully, can easily fall into committing violations of human rights. Only with a lot of watching can we be sure that that will not happen. So, and this doesn't depend upon whether a jail or prison is run badly or well. No matter how well they're run, they need to be watched over. Now, and being watched over is not just good for the people inside. Being watched over is good for the institution itself, because community trust is going to be much higher when people know that there is watching and they feel they know what is happening inside. And that means that people won't jump to negative conclusions when something goes wrong, and there might be more volunteers, and in general, there's more support for the institution. But unfortunately, in New York State, for reasons that are kind of complicated, watching of county jails is extremely limited. And fortunately, and that's where this project comes in, New York State law provides a partial remedy. Section 500J of the correction law gives clergy of all faiths who are in charge of congregations the same access to the county jails in their county as it gives to state legislators. A group of local clergy here and laity decided to pursue this avenue for transparency. And after negotiations with the sheriff's office, an agreement was reached on a policy that was adopted by the sheriff's office for how these clergy visits can happen. Over the past 2 years, 3 visits to each of our jails, our 2 jails, have taken place, so 6 visits in all. And in each visit, a team of clergy goes to housing areas that the team chooses, and once there, they observe conditions and they interview people that are living there. And so then from these 6 visits, the clergy take notes all their time that they're in there. And then the voluminous notes that result from that came to me actually for analysis. Over 100 interviews were done, and there's also comments from staff and observations of physical conditions in those notes. Now, some people would say that people inside, just lie and complain. However, our project starts from a more neutral conviction about what they're saying, or maybe a more positive one, that the incarcerated people are as fully human as people outside, and deserve to have their dignity and human rights respected, and that one part of the respect is to listen carefully and non-dismissively to what they say. And that's what our clergy visitors did. They sat down and really heard the stories and experiences. One of them said to me recently that he didn't find the complaints that he heard as crazy or contrived. In fact, that they were expressed to him in a matter-of-fact, very coherent way. So, and the situation also in terms of believing what we hear from the people inside is the accumulation of the views of different people. Just as when there are allegations of sexual abuse against a man that are made by several different women, those allegations, which it may be very hard to prove or corroborate in a definitive way individually, become much more plausible because of the accumulation of consistent stories. And here, similarly, our clergy heard very consistent stories in certain areas. And where they heard those consistent stories, we believe them. And the things that are in the written report that you have are when we say that something is a definite conclusion, it's because it was expressed consistently in the same way by lots of different people inside. When there's mixed opinions, we say that in the report. Now I want to say, before we get into the problems that the report suggested need to be addressed in the jails, that we do have a lot of appreciation for the changes that Sheriff Garcia has made since he took over 4 years ago. The jails now have more programs than they used to have, and and deaths have ticked down a little bit. However, significant problems remain, and the report details them. The report lays out 5 areas of concern and suggests actions to mitigate them. I'm going to give you an overview and a couple of examples of some of the issues, but it's not at all complete. I urge you to read the report. If you don't already have a copy, there's a copy in every press packet. Gail has extra copies, and you can get one from her and they'll be posted online as well. So a first concern is about race, which is a perennial concern not only in America, but very especially in carceral institutions. Some of the people inside experienced racist behavior, but those were only occasional instances. This was not something that was endemic that happened every day. Other people believed that whites were treated better than people of color in the jails, and that was a more frequent opinion, but still not anything overwhelming. What was very worrisome was that of the 5 people that the clergy were able to interview in segregation, not a single one was white. That doesn't prove that there was discrimination, either explicit or an implicit one due to implicit bias, but it raises the question of what the reasons are for the disparate outcomes, and those disparate outcomes deserve examination and attempts at corrective actions wherever there seems to be a problem. So that's the first area, is race. The second concern was food, and that was far and away the most quantitatively the most overwhelming concern. People inside reported over and over again that if they didn't buy lots of commissary items, they were hungry all the time. And the jail has a food vendor, and the food vendor's nutritionist wrote a letter, which I've seen, saying that the meals that the jail provides meet all applicable standards. But in practice, the meals aren't doing the job. It's impossible not to believe these reports that we hear from the overwhelming majority of the people inside. Why that's happening, we don't have the data from interviews with people to be able to determine. It does seem to be a problem that there's such a gap in meals between a dinner that's served at maybe 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon and a breakfast that happens maybe 14 hours, 15 hours later. And we do suggest that there be a snack to help on that. But beyond that, we think that further examination of why the supposedly adequate diet isn't in fact adequate in practice, why that happens, what the paradox, how the paradox can be explained. The treatment of women is another problem area. The women inside say that they are not able to get work assignments that men get. And that's a serious issue. You make some money that you can use for commissary when you have a work assignment. And if you have a work assignment, sometimes also you get extra meals. So that's an important gain. But in addition, you get chances to kind of move around the facility, not just be kept all the time in your housing area, and it makes life in jail less boring. Life in jail, it tends to be incredibly boring because there aren't many programs in a county jail. So that's a serious issue. But then menstrual products were a concern, that most women are having to get their menstrual products by asking for a tampon or pad one at a time, one from a correctional officer who's usually male. And that's very degrading, especially if you have a heavy period and you need a lot of them all the time. You get to feeling embarrassed. And so these are problems. And furthermore, women in the holding center downtown, which is just like 2 blocks from here that way, they're in the most dilapidated, oldest part of the jail, and men are largely in the newer pods that are in the 1970s period, as opposed to the 1930s period part of the jail. So that's a kind of form of discrimination that really needs to be remedied. A fourth area of concern is medical care. And here we, in terms of the substance of the care, we got mixed reviews. Some people complained, other people said that they got good care. So it's even obstetric care for a woman who was pregnant. So the jail is not disastrously failing to provide care, although there were definitely complaints. But one area was specifically looked not good, which was the provision of medications. When I am hospitalized, within a few hours, I start getting all the medications that I was taking on the outside that were prescribed for me. In the jails, it takes often 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Sometimes they never appear. The jail decides not to provide them for whatever reason. And these gaps can be very damaging. A person who's on Xanax or Subutex who has an interruption of 2 weeks, that's an extraordinarily dangerous situation. So something has to be done. We can't expect them to be like Buff General and provide it in 5 hours, but they could do better. The present situation is not okay. And the final area I want to mention is about religion. And the people who are not Christian have only spotty worship services available to them. There are services, but they don't happen regularly every week or anything the way they do for Christians. And if you're Jewish and ask for a kosher diet, you are banned from having any food commissary items. As far as I can tell, there isn't a halal diet offered at all. You can have a diet that doesn't include pork, I think. I think that's standard, but that does not make a meal halal to not have pork, just as not having pork doesn't make a meal kosher. The rules are much more complicated than that, and the jail isn't doing anything, isn't doing enough. And the Muslims and Jews also felt discriminated against in various ways, although I didn't get enough specifics to really be able to pin down what that meant, other than these issues about meals and about worship services being spotty. Now the clergy visitors heard. The clergy visitors heard things, but they didn't have access to any jail records, so they couldn't definitively confirm what they heard. But we find much of it, especially issues that are general rather than specific to one person, to be highly plausible. And in any case, the views of formerly and currently incarcerated people need to be part of the discussion of jail policies and practices. Profit-making corporations want to know what their customers think and do surveys to find that out as part of how they make their decisions. But the jails do not normally hear what the people who are incarcerated think and what their experiences are like. This project corrects that. It provides at least some kind of basis for thinking, for knowing what is thought by the people who are inside. And I think that's a very important addition to our public life. So I'd like to close by recognizing any clergy here, who made it through this weather, who have been clergy visitors. You've heard from Dean Rebecca Barnes, but we're going to hear in a moment from Rabbi Alex Lazarus Klein. But I'd like to just have if there are any of you that are out there that are clergy that did visits, please come up. And I'd like to, and then each of you would please state your name and where you're affiliated with, and because we want to recognize you, you're human rights heroes on this Human Rights Day. So, and your efforts are what made this report possible. So, okay, so let's see, we have Roger Griffiths. That's you, right? Okay, and we have Rabbi Klein here, and the dean. Anybody else who's here who's one of the visiting clergy? No. Okay. Clergy schedules are very complicated, and so I didn't expect a huge turnout, and I'm very pleased that we have them. So anyhow, at this point, I want to turn things over to Rabbi Klein to talk a little bit about his experiences inside. And Pastor Griffiths, if you want to add a little bit, just a word or two, you're welcome to also, but don't feel you have to. I didn't arrange that in advance. And then after that, Jerome Wright will say a few words to close us out.
First, I want to thank Stephen, who has spearheaded this project. It's really important work. It's a holy work, and thank you for making me part of it. And I want to thank Reverend Miranda Hammer, who really helped so much in this project and did a lot of the work for it. I consider going out to both to Alden and to Buffalo. I went to both facilities. Holy work. It involved spending a few hours of my time, and that was well worthwhile to advocate for the people incarcerated inside and to try to create better conditions, and that's what I'm hoping we can do through this process. I want to open by just saying that the people who worked at these facilities were nothing but kind to us. We would come into the facility. They were well-mannered. They allowed us access in the way that we had asked, and they were phenomenal to work with. So I want to thank, I know it is extremely hard work that they do, and I would really recognize that the project wouldn't be possible without them there. Usually what would happen, we would arrive at the facility, we would go through security, and then we would have access to several of the different portions of the facility to be able to talk to different inmates. And I had a chance to talk to a few dozen in both facilities, and it was very moving to hear their individual tales about why they were incarcerated, what struggles that they were having, what maybe we could address. And I think the report really comes down to the things that were very, very important, including what Stephen had mentioned about food insecurity in these prisons, about getting sanitary things for the women that were there. All these things would come up constantly. But I want to tell you a story about a woman I'll call Teresa, who is incarcerated over here at the Erie County facility in Buffalo. And I had a chance to talk to her, and her story moved me. It was one of these situations where she was incarcerated, she had been in poverty, and I think it involved driving under intoxication. She said many of the people that were incarcerated in the women's section, that was true for. But she also described the conditions. And let me tell you firsthand what that was like. When we went to the men's section, it was open. Prisoners, the inmates had a chance to move around freely when they had an opportunity. And there was TV there and such. But the women's section wasn't anything like that. It was so horrific, I can't even describe it. I know because it is an older facility. The paint was peeling on the walls. There were actual bars on each of the inmates in each of their prison sections. And it was small. There was only about 20 places that were there for the women. Teresa described to me that were active asbestos in this area, that they had limited access to phone or to anything. I understand they're incarcerated, but this was a prison condition that I would have expected 50 years ago. And I know that there's only one part that we're trying to correct it, and there's a lot of things that need correction. As Stephen said, there's a lot of things also going right. But this facility over there, particularly the women's section, is like something, again, about 70 years ago. And I pray that we can get the resources together. I know it is very costly to fix the institution, to make a new institution, but it is necessary. If you have a chance to go in there and see it yourself, please do. These women largely, again, who are incarcerated because of being intoxicated while driving, which is a serious offense. But to be in these conditions, it just did not seem humane. Again, I am very blessed to have been part of this project. I would go again in a heartbeat. Anything that I could do to help the lives of the people there and to make a safer environment, I would advocate for. May we, through this effort, help to bring that about. Thank you.
And I'm Pastor Roger Griffiths from Zion Lutheran Church in Clarence Center. I was also able to visit the Erie County Holding Center, where I had dozens of conversations with those who were incarcerated. But we went in groups of 3, and sometimes on different units, the incarcerated folks wouldn't want to talk to a clergy person, and so I was, by default, I'm not sure why, I gravitated towards the corrections officers, and I was able to have several conversations with them. And I think if I want to echo everything that has been said, and I want to just add to that our corrections officers are working incredibly long hours in the same asbestos-filled conditions. And that also brings an element of injustice that I want to raise and draw attention to. And yes, as the rabbi said, this is expensive work fixing these problems, but everyone in there is getting sicker with every breath that they take. They are getting sick in body and in spirit, and it is not fair. So thank you for the opportunity to offer that perspective as well. Again, I echo everything, and I'm just incredibly grateful for this holy work to be able to bring a little bit of hope, and also to bring a little bit of observation into these situations that are often, they're just opaque. So we were able to break into that a little bit, and I hope these reflections do have an impact and bear some fruit in the future. Thank you.
My name is Jerome R. Wright. I'm a deacon at Elam Christian Fellowship Church. And although I did not go into the facility to participate in the clergy program, I have the unenviable life of having been a resident at the holding center and also having worked in there as an employee. And because of both of those situations, I can totally affirm and confirm every single thing in this report. But let me be clear about this. This report is about changing situations that we have the power and authority to change. It is not about criticism or calling people out. It is about making sure that the people who reside in those facilities and work in those facilities have the best opportunity to leave there better than they came in each and every day. And the way to obtain that is by looking at this report not as something critical, but as something that has solutions. We didn't just complain about issues in this report. We talked about possible solutions and suggested ways that could make things better. We understand that corrections officers have a hard job, but as somebody who was formerly incarcerated, it is a difficult job to be incarcerated to, whether you committed the crime or not. And we're talking about a holding center and a jail where we don't know how many people there are guilty. So people who are not guilty, have not been adjudicated, have not had their day in court, should not be suffering from food insecurity, should not feel like they've been racially challenged, should not feel like they cannot see the religious leader of their choice. And let me be clear about this. I want to thank the clergy who go in there, because if it wasn't for clergy who came into those facilities, my life would not have changed. So we are putting a barrier to one of the things that have changed so many lives and allow people to contribute successfully upon release by now allowing the type of religious access that people should have, especially in a situation where their souls and bodies are kind of imprisoned. I want to be clear on the record about this. There are no inmates, there are no prisoners, there are no parolees, there are people. People incarcerated, people on parole, people impacted by the justice system. And until we start to look at people incarcerated as people, then we will allow these conditions to continue because there's no urgency, because we don't see the human value in these individuals to address these issues immediately. Incarcerated people's lives matter. One, I was incarcerated, and my life mattered then, and I think it still matters now. But more importantly, as the clergy has shown you, anybody who knows anything about religion or spirituality knows that we serve a God of righteousness and justice. And on this International Day of Human Rights, we have people in human rights situations that are deplorable, that are inhumane and unjust. And we should not be having that in the United States of America in 2025. These are just some of the issues that were brought up and that were consistently talked about. There are others. And I'm sure, as the pastor said, the staff have their complaints. And we would welcome, as he did, hearing from them ways that we can make that system better for everybody. But the object has to be that you are willing to make changes. And that has been the problem. We have been unwilling to make the necessary changes to make people's lives better so that when they walk out of there, whether they're at work there or they're residing there, that their lives are better and they bring a better human being back to the communities that we all live in and work in. This is about changing and saving lives, not only of the incarcerated, not only of the officers that work there, but you and I who in this community will inevitably come in contact with somebody who's been incarcerated. Do we want to come in contact with people who've been discombobulated by food insecurity, by lack of access to religious services, by lack of any programming, or lack of anything? We spend too much money as taxpayers upholding a system that is giving us nothing on the return. This report, if you read it not with a jaundiced eye, but with an attempt to understand these issues and an attempt to help ameliorate some of these concerns, we could go a long way towards changing this community on so many levels. But until then, we're torturing people, we're harming people, and although we've had one death, you all know all too well that one death is one too many. So, I beseech you to please look at the report, ask questions, reach out to Steve or any of these clergy and see if you can be involved. I'm also making a declarative call to other clergy to do your ministry, because if you know, one thing they're talked about in the Bible more than anything is prisons and jails. And we believe a word that comes from people who were murderers and convicted felons when they were in the Bible. So why now do we not look at people who are incarcerated with the same reverence as human beings? Incarcerated people's lives matter. This clergy showed you what their issues are. If we address them now, then we can all look for the type of community that we call the city of good neighbors, because right now, only good neighbors depend on what neighborhood you're living in. And if you're in the holding center or out in Alden, you're not treated as a good neighbor, and that needs to stop. Finally, I want to thank the media for coming out. Oftentimes, we ask for press to come out to talk about these issues, and because we're not, celebrities in the neighborhood, we're not law enforcement, we're not people with these quote-unquote names, many of you don't come out. But these are issues that impact all of us. And thank you for coming out so that we can get information out to our communities that there are problems in those jails and we need to address them. Those problems are not beyond our purview or ability to address. And having new buildings, infrastructure, does not make a better jail. Having people in there willing to change to make lives better for everybody makes us all safer. Thank you.
So, several of us will be here afterwards and available for questions and individual interviews. If any of you want to just, if any of you have questions, you want to meet right now, we can try to address them. I would just emphasize, the clergy had no power to change things. They had power only to collect data, to find out what's happening. The rest is up to you.
That's a good quote.
The clergy have no power to force change. They only collected data about some of the needs for change. The power to make change rests with you, with the people of Erie County, with the public officials in our county and city. And so I urge you all to take ownership of the problem, which only you can solve, and bring pressure upon our jails and upon our public officials to make the changes that are needed. So thank you very much, and if you have questions, you can ask them of me and the clergy visitors who are here, 3 of them, for a few minutes right now, and also you have my contact information on the report, and you can ask questions by email later on. And I thank you all so much for coming out in this terrible weather and being here to listen to this message, which I hope will be a message of hope, not just of there being things that are wrong. Thank you. Good morning.
Are there any questions for now, or you want to just individual interviews? I'm just curious, if you talk about what inspired you guys to go and come to the jails?
What inspired?
What inspired you going out of jails?
Well, I mean, I've only spent a short amount of time ever in the jail myself, but it was enough to realize how incredibly powerless I was and how little anything outside could help me. When I was in jail, a trustee made a sexual advance, and fortunately retreated when it became clear that when I recoiled. But there was nothing there that protected me. This was a privileged person incarcerated who had authority, sort of delegated by the guards. And it was clear there was no way to indicate anything to the outside. And you know, I had some medical problems, and it was clear if a crisis occurred on any of them, I would get help only insofar as the jail staff happened to take seriously what I was saying. So the powerlessness and the need for people outside to know was already very present in my heart from those experiences. So that to me was definitely a major part of why I got involved in this. Yeah.
And to piggyback on that, let me just say this. There's no secret that this jail has had many problems over the years, with deaths, with lawsuits, all type of problems. So it was incumbent upon somebody to say, let's look in there and see what the problems are and how we can fix them. And Steve, in his infinite wisdom, found 500J, which allowed the clergy to go in and be eyes and ears of the community, just like other groups that go in there. And because clergy is mostly trusted and respected, and because people in there will talk to clergy unlike they will talk to other people, we felt that this was a valuable addition to the oversight that the community should be doing anyway.
Anything else people want to ask right now? Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing your activity and for the case of the media, your stories in the near future. Thank you. Rebecca?
I just want to thank you all again for coming today and express our collective gratitude to the media for coming out and allowing us to share these stories with you. I will just conclude by saying I think one of the things that's very important, when I spoke to people, it was one thing to talk, but I think there was a lack of trust that their concerns would be shared. And so the fact that this is happening today is very important to their hopes, and I just thank you again for sharing this with our larger community. This is very important work, and to quote the rabbi, it's very holy work, and it's been an honor to be a part of it. Thank you.